Hi, good evening. My name is Jay Rothman. I am the host of the show. Welcome back to Real Men, Real Talk. Welcome back to the studio. And viewers, welcome back to episode 196 of Real Men Real Talk Live. This evening, I'm excited to introduce my co host. Literally sitting in a studio right next to me, I got Kamalu. We decided to go live together so we can physically be in the same space and side by side tonight, wearing no masks. Imagine that. Tonight we have a special guest joining us. He's been here before. Many of you know him in the local community as Sunwolf. Welcome back, Sunwolf, to Real
Great to be here. Yes, I'm so excited.
And of course, we have Chris Morrison joining us from somewhere in the Phoenix Valley. And tonight's episode is, in fact, Take Off Your Mask. Viewers, welcome to episode 196. If you should hear something you like or love, please feel free to drop it down in the comment section. Most important, if you're inspired, please share it out with your family and friends so that perhaps they can pick up something that changes the trajectory of their life. But for tonight's episode, what I would like to do is invite Kamalu, since he's on his top shelf with me, to kick us off, get us hot, light us up, and get us going on how we landed on tonight's topic. What happened in a production meeting just 24 hours ago that led us to this topic that we never, ever could have anticipated? And what does this topic mean for you tonight?
Well, firstly, aloha, everybody. So good to be here with you all again tonight. Last night in our production meeting, everyone was just kind of talking story about the things that were going on in our lives. And we weren't even talking about the show or topic. We were just catching up. And a theme that seemed consistent throughout Chris's story, Sunwolf's story, and Jay's story was different ways of exploring this theme of kind of taking off the mask, so to say, in an ego sense, to allow ourselves to actually be seen and be vulnerable with each other. And we got into some great depth in our conversations last night. And so I feel like we could have been live last night just talking stories. So we decided to just continue that conversation here tonight.
And really what precipitated it all was, as we were kind of diving in and just kind of connecting with each other, I noticed something very visual that was different on Chris. He felt to me like he was kind of vulnerable and naked. He had shaved his beard. And it's interesting, how often are we in the presence of a friend or an acquaintance that we've seen many, many times before? We meet for dinner, we meet for a drink, we meet for even in a grocery store, aisle 11, and we miss something that's changed. It could be the style of the hair. It could be the color of the hair. It could be that they now have a shaved head as a man, or maybe as a woman too. And perhaps we've gotten rid of hair on our face, or we've grown hair on our face. But in that moment, I realized that there was a significant change on Chris physically, visually. And so I dived in and asked the question, what's going on? I noticed you shaved your beard. And Chris, I'm going to invite you to share with us your why and how it's impacted your life just in the last couple of days.
Okay. Well, thank you, one, just to be seen, right? I appreciate it. So yeah, again, I shaved my beard, which has been something I've it's one of those things, like I could almost say, like, my pride and joy is how good of a beard I can grow. But what I came up against was in a conversation last Thursday. I've been hiding behind some type of facial hair, I think since 8th grade. And I haven't regressed into the story long enough, but somewhere as I got into puberty and my body changed, I developed, I had my face changed and I got a cleft chin. And I don't know exactly what it was, if, somebody made fun of it or whatever, but I felt a lot of, shame's not the word. I forget the term, but I did about having a chin structured in this way. And so as soon as I was able to, at the same time, I'm starting to grow hair. And so I've literally hid my chin since 8th grade. And being in conversation last Thursday, I kind of like dawned on me, like, I mean, I've had awareness, but really came home of like, here's another story that I've been telling myself and telling others for decades of telling myself that I'm not attractive. I'm not, that there's something wrong with my face, and I've got to hide it. And so literally I've been masking part of my part of me, right? Like there's only a few people in the world, well, now more, but that I've seen what my face really looks like. And so yeah, just it's more so about removing the stories than any type of perception on how I do or don't like. It's just digging into what is that story that I've been telling myself and telling others for so long.
And what have you learned about yourself from this deep dive into facing your truth since 8th grade or younger?
Really, it's coming to, there's always stories. I don't know. It's still a story that's unraveling and stuff like that. And really it comes to who I am. Like my whole thing, right, is being, who am I? Living into my document. Nowhere on my document that says I am a guy that grows a great beard. I am a guy that, like, there's literally nothing that defines any physical aspect of my body. Now that I think about it, which is interesting. Maybe it's something that I want to go look at, especially when it comes to fitness and being more in alignment with how I want to live my life. But yeah, the coolest part has been the conversations. The greatest thing has been how it's tied into, the conversation we had last night, right? Like for, when I was 18 to 22, doing what I could to grow a beard. So because I was a 18-year-old working as a machinist, everybody was 55 and older. There was no machinist in the US that were anywhere within my age bracket. And so literally growing hair so that I could look older, because my perception was that they would treat me better. And there was some aspects of like, I didn't hear kid, punk, child nearly as much when I had, a full beard as I did when I was wearing just a goatee.
So what is it that the beard gave you that you didn't have before it?
For that scenario, it's just, I think I just looked older. I just think that the people perceived me as being older, so they just, I had the experience, I had the knowledge, but man, the visual perception for people, they just couldn't get over the fact that here's some kid who knows how to do some of these really, really intricate, machining is not an easy trade.
So it gave you credibility, respect.
I don't know if it gave me any, but I don't know if it gave me any, but it kept me from from it being taken away from me. Maybe.
It boosted your self-confidence is what I sense is what happened. I want to jump in here for a second, Chris, because
Yeah.
I think it's something I shared last night. And if I didn't, I'm going to share it right here, right now. One of the gifts that I've received over the past 9 years in my own life journey is learning and embracing meeting somebody, not here, but meeting everybody right here.
Mm.
And I care less about what the external looks like. I go right in to meet the internal, the true essence of your soul, the true essence of who you are, the fabric, the tapestry within you. It doesn't matter how your hair color is or what hair you don't have. What matters is that you're authentic, you're who you are, you're not wearing an internal mask to hide an external mask to hide the internal pain or lack of self-confidence or lack of self-love. The man I met, Chris Morrison, in Sedona a couple of years ago, I fell in love with his spirit. That's you. And so that's my truth. And if there are people in your life that are judging you by the external, then it's an opportunity to become that master gardener. And over time, consider doing some weeding out people that are so shallow that they can't see beyond the hair on your face. Because what I got to meet was a beautiful man. With or without hair, it don't matter. I don't have a whole lot of hair on my head today. And I'll tell you what, I'm okay with that. And if people want to judge me for that, let them judge me. I don't need you in my life. Any of that making any sense to you, Son Wolf? What are you hearing?
Yes, I'm hearing a lot. There's two things I want to share. First of all, Chris, I could relate to one aspect about looking older. When I was young, people never took me seriously. I just looked so young. I figured, let me grow a beard. I started off with a mustache, and they thought I looked a little older. And then as I grew the beard, and as years went on, I realized, man, this is a really neat looking beard. It has neat markings. I like the markings on my beard. When I look at what women could do with their hair, I could really play with the beard, and so I really love that. And what happened was people did take me more seriously because I looked more of my age. I looked kind of quite young. Even today, when people ask for my age, I get all these expressions like, "Oh my God, it's enough." So that was that part. But as you were talking, Jay, something kind of came up. And what came up for me is this. We are wearing masks all the time, multiple masks. And the one that to me is most common that just came up is this. It's a canned response. It's a programmed response when someone says, how are you? How are you? How are you? Well, just a few days ago at a festival that I went to and at the gym, I said, well, thank you for asking me how I am. So I proceeded to go right to the person. And I said, well, I'm going to tell you how I am. And I shared with them 2 or 3 things that were happening in the moment. I want them to make it live. I want them to make it visceral. And when I walked away, he said, come back to me. I said, okay. I got to tell you, I've never experienced anything like that. That was refreshing. And it made me think how we are on such autopilot. When someone asks how we are, I want to really tell them from my heart. I don't want this canned response. And that's unfortunately what these masks do. It creates a monotone. It just creates a stagnancy, a contraction. And I know when I've experienced wearing my mask, because I don't want to be rejected. I don't want to be made wrong. I don't want to be looked at someone different, but it was difficult for me when I was around people to really show up. I was concerned about my inability to comprehend simple language. I used the excuse that I was never read in bed, so my English and comprehension is not the greatest. Could be some truth to that. And I just, wanted to see what's happening right now. Right now in the moment, I'm having a little confusion. I'm having a little bit of cognitive challenge. The thing is, I forget. I don't let people know when I'm in groups that happens because I want to protect myself of fear of like being looked at less than. So there are moments just happened just now that I kind of lost the thread in that moment. And now I'm, and that's okay. But with groups, something happens to me. What's going on for me right now in this show is a powerful way of expanding in personal growth like no tomorrow. Relationships, podcast, spending time in nature are powerful personal growth opportunities. Anyways, a few pieces right there.
Yeah, I love what you just shared. The last piece that I heard that just brought chills to my body, Sunwolf, is when you mentioned the word nature. Nature was the environment where I finally had the courage to strip down, literally remove all the masks, because I had spent a lifetime building up masks, a presence, an illusion, so that I'll be liked, so that I'll be respected, so that if I'm lucky, I'll be loved. Because deep within, I was always living in the imposter syndrome. I was never going to be enough. And I just manipulated a lot of different masks in my adulthood to be received, to feel like I was enough. And what I didn't know then was all of that, those insecurities came from my younger years, the child within. But in nature, that was the first place where I felt safe, not being afraid of being judged. And I just started to show up, and day after day after day after day. And eventually those masks started to drop.
Mhm.
And I'll let you in on a little secret, guys. Part of how I knew the mask was dropping was I started to release some heavy weight, about 60 pounds of heavy weight. It was all simultaneous. So Kamala, I want to invite you to tell us from your perspective, what does a mask mean for you? Because we had a conversation a little earlier today, and you have a very different perspective on the mask. So why don't you share your perspective?
Yeah, gladly, Jay.
Buckle up your seatbelts, viewers. Here we go.
When I was thinking after our conversation last night about this idea of the mask, I was visualizing less of like a Halloween mask that covers the face and more of like a snorkel or a scuba mask. The reason that popped into my mind is because I do believe in order to have a physical experience in physical reality, the ego is inherently a part of that. It's the way through which our soul filters through what's going on around us so we can navigate. So if you take the idea of a scuba mask, for instance, before you dive into the water, you got to put that on in order to see. So I don't think it is that the ego is inherently a bad thing. I think it is part of this life. It is part of this human experience. And it actually even allows us to have a human experience at all. We have a sense of individuality. But what it really comes down to is not getting rid of ego entirely, taking the mask off, so we won't be able to see. It's more about cleaning the mask of any smudges that are preventing us from seeing clearly and preventing who we are in source to shine through in this unique expression that is our individuality. So I think our ego, our individuality is a really beautiful thing, and it isn't really to be shamed or gotten rid of, like I hear a lot of people talk about. I think it's about just kind of shining it up a little bit so that we can shine through our divine essence more clearly as this unique expression of all that is.
That's very powerful what you shared, Kamala, because it brought up a whole nother experience that I had several years ago that was so powerful and so confronting. I attended a mask workshop where I wore this mask, and all of a sudden I'm experiencing other people. There's all kinds of emotions, insecurities that come out because they cannot hide behind their regular mask. And all of a sudden they're seeing this mask that they're just being confronted with, and all kinds of emotions and feelings and things go up that you can't hide, because this mask you're putting on is also covering up your ego mask. It's covering up the mask that we have to protect ourselves from being judged and the fear that we have. So that brought it up, what you just said. I mean, a mask workshop, so there's various, connotations to mask, wearing it and in a workshop and actually wearing it through our day-to-day life.
I was actually blown away when Kamalu shared his perspective today, because to me it was so brilliant, and it's kind of like the polar opposite of in this modern society that we call home. We see the mask; it's always identified as something negative, but the way Kamalu presented it, I was like, "Damn, that's so brilliant! It's the truth." If you ever gone scuba diving, or even as a child in a swimming pool or the ocean, we clearly put that mask on to help see clearer. And there are times it gets a little foggy, and we got to drop a little water in it and all that.
Or you got to buy a new mask. You got to put a new one on. And I celebrate that aspect of the ego. It's malleable. It's flexible. We can play with it. I don't have to be the same person I was yesterday or 10 years ago, but I still have to be someone. And I actually get to choose who that is.
Tell me more.
About which component?
You get to choose to be
who you want to be.
What does that mean for you?
Well, I mean, we've talked about physical masks that we've worn. Feel like I've shapeshifted a lot in my early 20s. I used to have long curly hair. I had no beard. There was a period of time where I was like chewing gum a lot, and I had this super defined jawline that I thought made me like super sexy. I had a mullet.
You're all out, man. The Victorian one.
Then I grew out a beard. I grew out my hair. I did dreadlocks, and if any of you follow me on social media, I actually did a post about it of like all my different phases over the last couple years, and each one was like, it looked different. And I don't think it's just because of how I was changing my physical appearance, but also the energy behind why I was changing my physical appearance. And so each of those characters, I'll call them, that I was playing, they each had their own energy to them, and they were all me, but it was a different flavor of me, for sure.
Beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, I'll say it. You've heard me say this before. Viewers, welcome home, Kamalu.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Chris Morrison, welcome home to this new season of exploration, of self-discovery. And all I will say beyond that is I'm super proud of both of you. I'm super proud of both of you guys. I do want to shift here for a moment here, because as we were diving into this topic last night, it really wasn't a topic. We were just catching up. I asked one question. What have you uncovered and discovered? What have you gone through since we've been on hiatus for a couple of weeks about yourself? And hey, buddy. And that was the only question. And that led to, oh, by the way, Chris, I noticed that you've shaved. Tell me about that. Tell us about that. And when it came time for me to share, we had been on hiatus for a couple of weeks. And that was because, unfortunately, I wasn't well. I didn't have the energy. Many of you may be aware I had a heart attack back, diagnosed on July 8th, but it started on July 4th, about 12 weeks ago. I believe it's 12 weeks ago. And about 3.25 weeks ago, I woke up one day and I had a reappearance of one of the conditions that I was diagnosed with, which is a inflammation of the outer wall of the heart called pericarditis. And that showed up, I believe, on Saturday, September 14th. And it was a very painful, intimate experience that I chose to hold on to for myself and by myself. I didn't disclose it to anybody, not even my beloved partner in life, Mary, for over 2+ weeks. And I shared with you guys last night why I made that choice not to share. And I'll share it with you viewers because I think it's important to understand. And that was because I felt if I put it out in the universe, meaning if I spoke those words out loud, then it was going to be really real. And I was not willing to go back to ER. I was not willing to go back to the hospital because I was not at peace with the level of care that I received. Yes, perhaps they saved my life on July 8th, but the sloppy care was significant. And I was, as many of you know, I tend to lean into holistic care treatment to self-heal. And so I didn't want to put it out to anybody because I didn't want it to become real. And I created a story around that somebody, if I share it with someone like Mary, she's going to want me to go right back to get a diagnosis. And I didn't want to go down that rabbit hole again. And so in me sharing that last night, I think it was Kamalo that said, well, it sounds to me like you put a mask on. You were wearing a mask. And so, Kamalo, I'm going to invite you to, again, break it down for me and the viewers. What did that mean for you? How was I wearing a mask by not disclosing that I had a physical condition that was very painful for over 3 weeks?
In the sense of the mask being something that we hide behind, to me, it felt like you were hiding what was really going on for you out of fear of this idea that if I speak something, if I think about something, then it manifests. And that's a very common thing that we hear a lot in the spiritual community. You know, energy flows where your attention goes.
Yeah.
But there is this other idea of bypassing, which is not acknowledging that something's real and denying that it's real because you don't want it to be real, and kind of living in denial. And ultimately, I believe what I shared with you last night was that when we break it down, we always have choices of why we do things. And if that choice is coming from fear, you know that ultimately it isn't true. There's ultimately some kind of lie in there. And when we're acting from a place of fear, whether it's sharing or not sharing, that's when we have the greatest capacity to hurt ourselves. And if we talk about negative energies having hold of us, I think that's when we actually give our power away, is when we make decisions based on fear. And for me, the saddest thing in receiving that, being around you almost a daily basis after, like, you know, during these 2 or 3 weeks this was going on, was that I couldn't be there to support you in that. It was less about me being sad or worried about your health, but just the fact that you were holding all of that alone. And that's what I felt the most sad about, honestly.
Yeah.
Was that
Well,
what you were doing to yourself?
yeah. And here's what happened for me, Kamalo. Thank you for sharing that. 2 days ago, I hit the pinnacle of pain. It was the most physical pain I've ever experienced in my life. I could barely breathe. I mean, now I understand what someone that has compromised lung capacity deals with and lives with. I want to talk about compassion. But on that day, 2 days ago, I just surrendered. I went for a healing session with a beautiful soul sister and dear friend of ours in a local community. I can't say that I felt any different in the session because I was in too much pain. But I got home that night. And when I woke up in the middle of the night, something was very different. The pain was gone, 100%. And yesterday was my first day of living pain free. And I woke up this morning and it's Groundhog's Day all over again. I've got no pain. And so I've spent the last 2 days, viewers, asking the question to God, the why. I asked it for 3 weeks, 3.2 weeks. Why is this back? What is this here to teach me? And I got the answer. The answer was I hadn't learned the lesson the first time, which was when I had the heart attack back in July. I kept it to myself for the first couple of days while we were in Denver because I didn't want to disrupt the wedding that I was officiating. I didn't want to end up being carted off to a hospital in Denver. I wanted to honor my commitment to this beautiful man, Scott Upton. And here I was, fast forward, weeks later, I think God was testing me, saying, okay, let's see if you learned the lesson. And clearly it took me 2 weeks in to realize that I was doing myself a disservice by not at least sharing with a couple of people that I trust most of my life. Number one was Mary. And that's the lesson.
And now that you have spoke it, Jay, how do you feel?
Incredible. Grateful. No, we talked about that last night, the word gratitude. We use it loosely in the language, just like we use the word I love you and I'm sorry. But I will tell you this, my friends. When you experience the level of physical pain that I endured for all those weeks, and you come out of it untouched, unscathed, and alive, you finally experience what the true essence of gratitude means. Most importantly, what it feels like deep within here. So I've learned a few lessons. I know I got it this time. So God, if you're paying attention and listening to me, you don't need to test me again with more pain.
Yeah.
And what came forward, and I'm gonna move it on in a moment here. The other thing that came forward in our production gathering last night was the last time I had felt any kind of pain at this level. It wasn't physical pain. It was the emotional pain when I felt abandoned in 2015 by my ex-partner in life. That wasn't physical pain. That was emotional pain. This is the only other time where I had such a deep, severe experience with pain. So we're going to get tested, people. And it always comes down to how do we embrace it? And, what I learned is that
There's a comment in the chat here right now from Nancy Clarkson that I wanted to speak to real quick, which is when we hide our pain from our loved ones, we're depriving them of the blessings and growth they can receive by helping us. And this was a really powerful lesson that I learned as well a couple months ago when I was in like the worst financial situation I've ever been in my life. I was scared and worried about how people would perceive me being weak and vulnerable by reaching out and asking for help. And I remembered all the times that I had been able to help the people in my life that I loved and cared about and be able to show up for them, and how much of a gift that was for me to be able to even give that support and give that help to those people and help build each other up. And so even just like reframing that dialogue of like, oh, I'm selfish if I ask for help, it's almost the opposite. Like you're depriving the people in your life who really care about you and love you the opportunity, the gift to actually give if you never allow yourself to receive. And
That's called blocking the blessing.
blocking the blessing.
Yeah. So that's why I got emotional, because I promise that I won't block that blessing again. I was always a giver, but I tell you what, I love to receive today. And I will allow myself to receive when or if I find myself in another medical crisis. And so thank you, gentlemen, for holding the space for me last night and allowing me to work through what I worked through last night. With you guys by my side, and of course, Mary, even, what's really interesting about this moment is that she did not get angry. At least she didn't express it. If she's holding on to it inside, that's for her to work through. But she did not scold me. She did not treat me like a child. She did not express to me that she's angry or pissed off. She just was just present, because she understands, I believe, that this is my journey to work through. This is my gunk. This is my caca. This is not hers to try to manipulate or control. And that to me is a true essence of a healthy relationship. But at the same time, I'm taking accountability now. And so, Kamalu, I also want to acknowledge what you were just talking about, what you just shared in a moment ago. And Nancy went on to say here, I believe that Jay told me that beautiful statement when I needed it. Right, Jay? Yeah, I did. Nancy. I want to welcome you back to Real Men Real Talk Live. I know you've been through a journey that no human being should ever have to witness or go through. But I want you to know how proud I am of you. You, my friend, are a warrior. And I'm not talking about a fighting warrior. You're truly learning how to tap in to your humbled warrior through this experience that you're going through this season right now. And welcome home to Real Men Real Talk Live. Thank you for joining us tonight. I want to shift gears here right now. Chris Morrison, what are you hearing? What have you heard? And how is this resonating with you? All that we've been diving into in the last 10 minutes or so.
There's this, I don't know if I would call it saying, but something was said to me beginning of the year that just has been kind of playing through my head as we're talking about this subject, is men suffer because they hunt alone. And we've got all of these social constructs that tell us that we can't, that we either are competing with each other, that we need to do better than each other, that we can't be emotional, that we can't have these conversations. And, that's just something that when I say that I'm going to lean into my authenticity and there will be no filter, think that a lot of that comes from that one statement. Was it? And so, it was really sad hearing that, being in that conversation last night. And two parts. One, I always reflect on myself on how could I have shown up and been there for you better. And then, which is, there's parts that I can step into. If I say that I love somebody and I care for somebody and I'm there for somebody. And I think actually this weekend, I was talking with my girlfriend, and I was like, I think something's up with Jay. I need to check in on him and see how he's doing. And we talked a little bit about it, and feeling that there's something off. But I didn't really dig into what the level of that was. And so being more present and more in real time when those little nudges come up.
Well,
like, hey, something's off here. Don't put that off till tomorrow, right? To make that text message. And then, that's just kind of what came up for me is just, I think like literally you texted like 5 minutes later about the show and stuff like that, and to kind of gave me an opportunity to check in with you. So it was just, the universe really does listen. And I was like, I said something to Ellie, and she was just like, yeah. And then we were texting, and then we were, opened up about what was going on. So just, it's interesting how we are all connected energetically. So
I think part of what I'm hearing, Chris, is when we get a sense, we shouldn't put it off, because when we put it off for tomorrow may not come.
Yeah.
And one other thing I want to share that just really came through for me is if you would have said to me, well, Jay, what was the mask that you wore for 2.5 weeks or so, not sharing, not disclosing that one of the conditions had resurfaced. And I think for me, it was the mask of maintaining my strength, that I'm strong, because if I share my truth, then, there's that story that's maybe on a subconscious level, which is that I'm not strong, I'm weak. Damn it, it's back.
Yeah,
And
that would have been the question I would have asked is, what is the story you're telling yourself? What is because that's the thing, right? And then touching back to what Kamala was talking about is like, is this story based in fear?
And if I had, and I didn't think it was, that's at least the story I was telling myself. But here's my truth right now is that if I shared what I was feeling, that it was going to disclose a sign of weakness. And I've worked so hard to be strong, not to be strong in the external, but to have a body temple that's strong and vibrant and healthy. And to get hit twice in 3 months, I was not open or willing to accept that as my truth. So if I hide behind a mask and you don't know, then all is well.
Safe.
And that's a component that I wanted to say in response to you as well, Chris, is that it's not your kuleana, it's not your responsibility to feel that for Jay. Like, that's Jay's responsibility to express that something's wrong. If you have a sense that something might be wrong, Of course, I think it's great to reach out and check in on your friends, but ultimately it comes to us to reach out for support when we need it. I don't think our friends are, I don't think it's fair to ask our friends to read us.
Hmm.
Makes sense. Samuel, you've been awfully quiet.
Yeah.
Why
I'm
don't you?
listening. I'm listening.
I want to invite you to take us in another direction, unless there's something you want to piggyback on.
Well,
What we
I do a little bit. I like Camilla was just echoing about what Chris was experiencing, and it really, you know, we have to be really kind to ourselves that it's not about us. You know, we do the best we can. We're there for each other all the way. But I remember several days ago, Jay. I don't remember details. I had the instinct to call you.
Hmm.
Do you remember? Several
Yeah.
days ago.
Yeah,
And
you were a pain in my ass, is what you were. I was like, just leave me alone, man. But I couldn't say that to you. I was like, dude, you're overwhelming me. That's what I'm saying to myself. I was in so much pain. You know,
no, but
when I
that was
wasn't
even
working, I
before.
needed that time just to decompress. Because I
But
didn't
you,
clear my schedule for 3 weeks, man. I was still
right.
doing my land work. I was still working,
That was that
working
short.
through it.
But when we talked, it was perfect timing, as you expressed. It was not that short little time. As soon as I heard that you had all the stuff going on, I just want to surrender and release, and you know, need to deal with that. You know, nobody knows you better than you
Yeah.
in that way. So anyway,
Anyways, I want to switch gears here and ask each one of you this question: what does taking off the mask mean for you? Sunwolf, why don't you
okay,
kick us off and start us off?
taking off the mask means freedom. I can be myself. Finally, I don't have to play the game. I don't have to acquiesce to something that doesn't resonate with me. Taking off the mask also allows me to get in touch with my purpose and my dharma, what I'm here to be and do and have, without all the noise, without all the interference, which is totally incongruent with who I am. And it gives me a chance to really explore more deeply because I haven't allowed programs to get in the way to take over and to control my true identity, where there's always a quiet suffering that's not me, but I just got to play the game to be accepted or fear or whatever. So yeah, not having a mask is being a radical, authentic self. Oh, and recognizing that there is a mask, or recognizing a behavior that may be a conscious, being more conscious of our behavior that doesn't support us is really important. Is having that awareness so we can move forward and be okay with it.
And how does that, when you have removed, I'd say probably multiple masks over a lifetime of 7+ decades, the last time you removed the mask, what was that physical experience like for you?
I felt very light. I started to move into a very bold place that it really doesn't matter what's going on outside of me. More confidence, a sense of belonging to self, and a sense of really appreciating and loving myself unconditionally, even with the foibles, even with the idiosyncrasies, even with the things that are so crazy. And so, I mean, I learned that we all have stuff. And when for example, I could be really hard on myself, how useless I am in the physical world and handy things. I have a toolkit that fits in a Ziploc bag. But what I learned, I have a choice. I could be really upset at myself, or I could just accept myself and create humor. Humor is a powerful mechanism to release stress and let go of all this armor that we have. So I think the key is unconditional love, self-acceptance, self-realization that I'm not here to be perfect. I'm not here to, impress. I'm just here to be in peace and love.
Chris Morrison, you've had some time to listen to Sunwolf. What have you learned about yourself when removing the mask?
I really like what someone was saying, and just the way that comes from me, and then the way that I speak is, we are always being. We can observe our being, and we can choose our being, right? And for me, able to observe that I am telling this story of, if I show my chin, it's unattractive, right? That's the story that I was choosing to be, and that I needed to hide it, and that I'm more attractive one way or another. And right, so I've stepped into choosing who I'm going to be. Is that I actually haven't really thought of as I'm like this. I choose to be my authentic self, no matter where I'm at, right? Like, that's part of my statement. But the thing that's coming up is I choose to love how I look, no matter what. Choose to be in love. I choose to love more of who I am than how I look. And so stepping into that state of being, rather than, constantly playing with these stories that don't serve me, don't serve anyone. Being able to really boldly step into these different states, these different places that I, of how I wanted to, create myself, because I do get to create myself, and I can create from the story of I'm ugly if I show my face, or I can choose from the statement of I am beautiful inside and out.
Wow. Let's take a moment here just to allow that to process. What's coming forward for me, Chris, is you have 2 young sons. What message do you think you could share with them around this topic tonight that potentially can change the trajectory of their life at such a young age? Because they are so vulnerable and so susceptible to creating masks as early as we may learn in grade school or middle school. It's part of the ego's way to protect the child. So anything come forward as far as how you can utilize this experience, not only as a learning lesson for yourself, but to then share it with those 2 precious boys you love so much.
It's part of everything I do, man. Every chance, everything I'm doing right now ties back into how they can declare themselves, and so that all of these things that are said to us and done to us don't become those labels, don't become those masks, don't become those statements of who we are. All of this work for me comes back to how can I get them to declare who they want to be, so that the labels are less sticky. I love that context for me, like just having a tattoo across my chest that is directly labeling me It was just such a visceral thing. Going back to, so I always come back to, if I can just make those labels that will get placed on just a little less sticky, I have, an opportunity to live in this world of infinite possibility that I found myself in at 40 years old.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Kamala, I'm going to challenge you with the same question, man. What is removing or taking off the mask? How has it impacted your life?
Well, we're talking about the mask in the context of allowing more of who we really are to be seen. The impact that has had on my life is a depth and a level of love and connection that I'd never experienced before, that I wasn't even aware was possible. And love in like its true essence, the experience of that. And not just romantic or intimate love. That was the first love that really showed me that and taught me that. But even within friendships, and actually experiencing that was incredibly exciting and got me just so pumped for life, because I knew that there was a whole world of love to be experienced, and so many different ways that can manifest and look like. And every person that I enter that vulnerable space with, it's a very different connection, it's a very different experience, and it always teaches me something new about myself. And so it's it's been one of the biggest blessings in my life. It's the ability to just be real and be vulnerable with people, and open up space for people to be in my life in that way and for me to be in theirs.
That is a gift. And before I close this out with sharing my own experience with that tonight, answering my own question that I proposed to all three of you, I want to just acknowledge two comments that came up while we were diving into this last sequence on the show tonight. Nancy says, beautiful Sun Wolf and Chris. For me right now, not wearing a mask, that I don't have to worry about what others may think of me because I know who I am. That is the journey of coming home.
Absolutely.
We experience the true essence of who we are here inside what I call the body temple. We finally experience freedom and a level of peace within many of us may never experience in a lifetime. So Nancy Clarkson, welcome home, soul sister. And this is for you, my dear friend. I love you. I also want to acknowledge Chris Beck. Welcome to Real Men Real Talk Live tonight, Chris. And I want to share his note. He says, I've recently taken off my mask. I recently resigned from my career, wherein I was wearing a mask. Now I'm faced, ironically, the word faced he uses, with accepting who I really am. And Chris, all I can tell you is I know how much courage it takes. I don't know your backstory, how many years you were in your career, but that was the first mask I took off when I left corporate America. And I resigned from a very long, successful career. But I knew that if I stayed in corporate, I would continue to wear that mask. And that mask needed to be removed because it was just an illusion. It wasn't the truth of who I was. It was how I wanted people to perceive me as a man, as a businessman. And it contributed to a lot of unhealthy lifestyle choices in my life. And so I want to acknowledge you and and just encourage you to continue to go on this journey of self-discovery to find out the true essence of who you are. And I'll tell you what you're going to find is someone who you're going to fall in love with, yourself. And so welcome to this new journey, my friend. And I'm going to close out by just sharing my closing thoughts on real briefly, what does the mask, removing the mask meant for me? I'll tell you how I felt about a week ago when I finally had the courage to share my truth. I did it in the presence of Kamalu. Mary was home, and I decided to just share my truth, what I've been dealing with since September 14th or so. And through opening up, I felt so much pressure release, so much, because I was no longer having to maintain an illusion that wasn't true. I wasn't okay. I was hurting. I was in pain. And so for me, it brought me another level of peace. And through that process, as soon as I shared it with Mary and Kamalu, it gave me permission to kind of just start to share it with a few other people. Not the whole world until this moment, but a few other people in my life. One was my sister. One is my sister, I should say, and a few others. And since then, Mary shared it out, and I'm at peace with it. Because here's the truth. I'm free of it today. I no longer have pain. The condition is dissolved. My strength is back. I feel it significantly back. Hey, we're back tonight live on air. And so other than that, unless any of you guys have any closing thoughts or words you'd like to share, we could call it a wrap. Chris, anything come up for you?
Something had, and now it's gone. They're literally like, oh, there's one last thing, and out it goes.
All right. Well,
You know
let's pass the volley to Sunwolf, and perhaps while he shares, just if there's anything that's come forward for you, Sunwolf, in this moment, please share it, and maybe it'll come back for Chris in a moment.
Yeah, I think that the key thing is having the courage, despite maybe doing what most people are not doing, not following the status quo. And I was very fortunate at a very young age that I never played the game. I saw the writing on the wall when I went for job interviews, and I realized this is not me. I didn't wear a suit and tie. I wore nice clothing. I ended up conducting the interview, and immediately I said, what the freaking fuck am I doing here? This is not me. I don't want to work in a corporation. I've been very, very fortunate, and I paid the price after for several months, being really within myself, no contact with anyone for 5-6 months. And then finally, it opened up when I walked into a health food store. So from that day on, in my early 20s, I've had the most extraordinary conversation, mindful, meaningful ways to be of service to help people. And it took a lot of boldness and courage when people would be saying, how could you do this? You should be grateful you can have a job and make a lot of money. Well, money is not a determining factor for my joy, peace, bliss, love, adventure of life. Because I don't want to be taken over by something that doesn't sing, the breath of life like I like to sing.
Yeah.
What I just heard you say, Sunwolf, is at a very young age in your 20s, you made a conscious choice not to be a sellout.
Exactly.
That took, like in New York, they called that kahunas,
Kahunas.
The Italians say it takes kahunas, and it took kahunas for you to do that.
Gumption. Yeah.
And I respect that story that you shared. I've heard it from you many times before. Chris, anything come back for you, or Kamalu? Otherwise, we're going to wrap it up.
Well, Sunwolf mentioned money not being his reason to be happy, his reason for joy. And the only thing that I have to say about that is that no matter what's going on in our life, joy and happiness is always a choice. No matter what anyone else has to say about our situation, no matter how it looks on the outside, we can always choose to be happy just because that's how we prefer to be. And so thank you, Sunwolf, for sharing your story.
Gentlemen, are we good to go? I tell you what, I was literally excited all day long. I know Lionel Richie wasn't saying all night long, but I was excited all day long today because it's been a couple of weeks, and I missed you guys, and I missed our viewers. I missed being in this environment, in this energy field as comments are flowing in. And again, I want to invite you viewers, if you heard something you like to love, please share it out with your friends and family. My intention is 100% to be back here next week with all of you as we dive into a brand new topic that will be episode 197. But for now, thank you for joining us this evening on Real Men, Real Talk.